Hey everybody, it's Tori and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. For today's video, I am flipping through my gnome bullet journal for all the gnomes I've made in 2022. This is the journal that I've done all my gnome challenges in for 2022, so there is about 60 gnomes in here. It is a B5 size from Walmart, believe it or not. It's got these stark white pages. I love these journals, and they have perforation as well, just in case I mess up on a gnome, I can take it right out. And if you find these from Walmart, definitely pick them up because they are super amazing and I can't find them most places. So I would highly recommend if you can find it. But without further ado, let's hop into my gnome journal. All right, so I have some notes over here. It looks like when I was trying to write Creative Minds Coffee Grinds Daily Gnome Challenge. This is what I used as the intro of my gnome challenge back in June. This was such a fun gnome challenge. It was the first one I ever did, and I used a wheel to determine what kind of themed gnome I should make each day. This was my bubble bath gnome that I started out with, and I think he's absolutely adorable. Here is my poker gnome over here. I think he's cute too. I'm gonna think all of these gnomes are cute. You just wait. Oh, this one was so cool. It was SpongeBob was the theme it landed on, but I really wanted to make a Patrick Star gnome because I knew I could make his beard into kind of like Patrick's pointy hat. And I have the little jellyfish over here. Okay, so this one was actually really funny. This looks exactly like my February gnome, Pierre. And here's my February gnome right here for comparison. My aunt actually was watching the gnome challenge and she was like, hey, Pierre got a job. He got a job as a painter. And I totally agree. I think it looks adorable. This was also a really cool gnome. This was the Hunger Games themed gnome, so I made Katniss with her little bow and arrow, and then the fire, and the Mockingjay pin. That was a really cool gnome as well. This one I actually thought would be really popular. I guess it kind of was, but this was during like the Johnny Depp trials, if you followed that. So I came up with a pirate gnome and I wanted to kind of make it look a little bit like Jack Sparrow from the Pirates of the Caribbean. I really like how that one turned out. We have a movie theater gnome or just a movie gnome. I can't remember what the theme was on the wheel, but I'm not entirely in love with this gnome. I think he's cute, but I think I can do better if I tried to do it again. This was my, was it coffee or donuts? I can't remember, but I made it into a Dunkin' Donuts gnome. We have a baseball gnome right here, and I didn't realize it then, but all the sports gnomes that I end up doing are all female style, which I think is pretty cool. Here is my Greek god gnome. His sandals just, oh my gosh, they're so cute. We have a chocolate gnome over here. I don't know what I was thinking with these strawberry seeds. They look very strange, but I really like the beard on this one. This one ended up getting pretty popular on TikTok, but I really like this gnome. I didn't think it was going to get as much attention as it did, but I think it's very cute. You can actually tell if I go like this, I had to fix that nose because it ended up looking a little bit strange, so I had to cut some paper out to fix it. Here's a little mailman gnome. I'm not sure why I went with yellow and blue. I might go with like a red and blue if I were to do this one again, but I still like it. This golf gnome gave me a run for my money. I know I ended up doing this golf gnome again at some point. I know I'm giving away a lot of the gnomes. Maybe I ended up taking it out of here. But yeah, I made this golf gnome a couple times and I just ended up giving up. I wasn't entirely sure what to do. He kind of looks like Tweedledee and Tweedledum, but I think the golf ball nose is kind of cute. Here was my caterpillar gnome. I made it based on The Very Hungry Caterpillar by Eric Carle. I think that's adorable. We have a little bunny gnome over here. I really loved the Encanto gnome. I got really excited to do this theme, although I kind of wish I had kept the hat either white or did a lighter color. I'm not entirely sure. If I were to do this again, I really do like the neonness of this, but I might make like the embroidery in a different style. We have a lemon gnome with a little glass of lemonade over here. This one was really cool. This was a graduation gnome, so I did 2022 in the background. I'm honestly thinking about making a sticker of a graduation gnome and just changing up the years so people can get it as they want it. I think that would be a really great idea. We have a really cute ice cream gnome, and I love the color palette of this one. This is one of my favorite gnomes I've ever done. I love the color palette and I love the shading. I'm still trying to get better at shading, but I think I did a really good job on this one, and seriously, one of my favorite gnomes I've ever done. And the theme for this one was Baker. I'm pretty sure that's what came up on the wheel. Oh, I love this gnome so much. I think this one was Beach Gnome. I really wanted to go with a bright coral and a bright yellow, and I paired it with this blue for a wavy beard. I really like it. I think my favorite part is the sunscreen on his nose. This one was a robber gnome. I remember on my wheel I put policeman and robber just because like I was throwing a bunch of random stuff in the wheel to see what I would get. I didn't end up getting policeman, and the robber kind of felt out of place, but he's still cute though. This was a Minion gnome, and it came out around the time that the new Minion movie came out. I think it's like Rise of Gru or something, but very, very cool. It was definitely out of my comfort zone for that one. This was also definitely out of my comfort zone, and looking at this, it looks like the chicken on top of Monica's head in Friends, but it's like that and the Pirates of the Caribbean, the squid tentacle dude. No idea what his name is, I'm butchering that, but this was the squid themed gnome, and it definitely looks funny, but I tried my best. This is also one of my favorite gnomes I've done, especially in this entire gnome challenge realm that I have. I really, really love this pride gnome. I love all the colors. I ended up taking this hat idea with the love is love is love. I used it in my Gnomevember gnome for my turkey gnome. I really, really, really love how this turned out. This is a really cool gnome too. I think I did more shading on these as well. I was trying to get more into shading when I was doing these gnomes. And I really like this. I think it was a circus gnome or a clown gnome. Can't remember what the exact theme was, but this one I also added a mouth, which I usually don't add on my gnomes, but I think it was a good idea for this one. Here's my little teacher gnome. She's definitely adorable as well. And this was my last gnome for the 30-day gnome challenge in June, which was this really, really, really cute flamingo gnome with this little monstera leaf. Oh, you know, I think this was supposed to be one of the other days because I remember this one being the last one. I messed up on the original quilt gnome, so I must have put it in the back and took it out from one of the pages. Yeah, I can see it right here. So that's why the perforation is nice. I just took it out and I had made another one over here. That is completely it for my June gnome challenge. And now we have a couple pages where I did a calligraphy video. I'm not entirely sure why I did it in this journal, which it's just 2 pages, so that's not a big deal. And then we are moving on to Gnomevember, which is my most recent gnome challenge from November 2022. This was another 30-day gnome challenge that I posted on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, and this was my intro page for that. This one was a little bit different. I had made a prompt list so other people could join in on the gnome challenge this time, and the first prompt for Gnomevember was pumpkin. I think he's really cute. I wish I did a little bit of a better job because it was the first one, but I still really like the burlap hat and the pumpkin and all that, but I think for the first of the gnome challenge, I always get a little bit stressed out because I want the first one to really draw you in. He's still cute though. I can't be too mad at him. We have the owl themed gnome from Gnomevember. This one was really, really cute. I really liked this one. This was one of my favorite Halloween ones, and I really liked the ghost hat on top. This is the candy themed gnome. I'm glad I added in this little pumpkin to collect all the candy. And I did a lot more female style gnomes in this gnome challenge. I only did a couple in June, but I got a lot more comfortable with the braids and the ponytails and that kind of stuff. So you'll see a lot more female style gnomes in this gnome challenge. Here's another female style gnome. This was Spider. I really wanted to do a gray beard because I don't think I've done a gray beard before. I might have like outlined in gray, but I really wanted this gnome to look like old and cobwebby. I think it came out great. I love how massive the sunflowers are on this gnome. I didn't know if I was going to like it because of how big they were, but I really wanted it to be a statement on the hat. So I do like how this one turned out with the scruffy beard as well. This one is a little bit different than all the other gnomes, you can probably tell. He is tiny, but I really wanted him to be sitting on top of a mushroom. And I really like how this came out. I do like the color palette too. Here is my female style coffee gnome. I had done a coffee theme in January 2022 where I made a male style coffee gnome, which is right here. And I kind of wanted to make Brewster's sister. So you can definitely tell they're related. That's what I was going for. Here's an apple gnome. I really like the apple core right here. I think that's my favorite part. Here's another one of my sports gnomes. She is a soccer gnome. I have my baseball gnome, and then actually it was in my 2022 bullet journal. I did a football theme, and that was a female gnome as well. We have a corn gnome. And every single time I look at it, I can't get that corn song out of my head. I really can't. But I also really like how this looks like bunny ears. Somebody had told me that in the comments on my corn gnome video, and I laughed out loud. I thought that was hilarious. We have another quilt gnome. Honestly, I think I like my quilt gnome from last gnome challenge a little bit better, but I like the fall vibes of this one too. This was, I can't remember if it was squirrel or acorn. I think it was acorn was the theme for this gnome, and I really wanted to make a squirrel kind of style gnome to go along with it. I don't know why this gnome ended up so teeny tiny compared to all my other gnomes, but this was my book gnome, and I really wanted a little bookworm on his hat, and I had been doing a ton of like just brown tones and fall tones, so I wanted to make this one really bright, I remember. Here is my maple gnome. I had already done a pancakes gnome inside my bullet journal for 2022, and I can show you that right here. So this was more blueberry pancakes, and this one was more focused on just regular like maple syrup, I think. I love how this one turned out. I think the pancake hat is such a cool touch. Here is the Scarecrow gnome. I really wanted to bring back the burlap hat that I did in the pumpkin gnome at the beginning of this gnome challenge, and I think it tied in really well with the Scarecrow. Over here we have fall floral. I really wanted to say like mums or something, but I also, for the people who were going along with my gnome challenge and making their own gnomes, I wanted to give them more of a general theme, so just like fall colors and florally. I think it came out okay. I had higher hopes for this gnome. I think the hat is throwing me off a little bit, but I think what the problem is, the leaves are more stuck out this way and more in this way. It just looks kind of lopsided, but if I were to do it again, I would have definitely done a different hat. I'm also not in love with this color palette. I do love some pastels, but for the fall vibes, I wanted to try to get away from it, and then after doing this one, I was like, nope, I need fall again. I really like the dark browns and the purples and the mustardy yellows and that kind of stuff. This was leaves, and I really wanted to do a leaf beard on this gnome, so I'm glad that this turned out so well. This farmer gnome, you know, I think the problem is I should have gone over the plaid another like skinny line across this way, like horizontally. I think that would have helped it a little bit, but honestly, the colors are so off. This was supposed to be a pumpkin. I colored it green. This was supposed to be corn, and I colored it all yellow when it was supposed to be like a green husk. I was just all over the place for this gnome, but It could be worse, I guess. This was a fox gnome, and sometimes when I make like animal style gnomes or like cartoon inspired style gnomes, I think that the gnome essence of it kind of gets lost, but in this case, I think you can kind of still tell it's supposed to be a gnome. Like it has the tail and it has the ears, but I still have the braids, I still have the nose, still has the hat. There's going to be another one that I'm not quite sure, it still looks like a gnome, but that's okay. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I loved my baker gnome so much from my June gnome challenge, so I knew I had to do another baker style gnome. So for my pie theme, I really wanted to recreate that gnome I did before with more orangey tones and the pies around it. I love how this one turned out as well. This is also one of my favorite winter gnomes. I want to put this guy like in sticker form and stick him on my laptop. I think it's so adorable. I love the plaid theme. I love the mittens. His beard is so poofy. Something about this green and like grays and browns and that kind of stuff, it really speaks to me. And every single gnome I put this green in, I swear I love it so much. So if you remember back when I was talking about the Pride gnome, I had that idea of the white hat with a bunch of cursive simple words going across, which was love is love. And now this one is gobble, just written a bunch of times for my turkey gnome. I really love the style of this hat. I think it gives it a little bit something extra instead of coloring it all in. Here's a little snowman gnome. Again, I think if I switch up the nose and I made this one kind of pointy, I'm not so sure it still looks like a gnome now. I think it just looks like a regular snowman. And I also have that problem with, I'm skipping ahead, but I have that problem with this penguin one too. I don't think it looks like a gnome anymore because this was supposed to be the beard. It's shaped like a beard, but then I turned it into a body and then the nose is pointy. It's got wings now. I'm not entirely sure this still looks like a gnome. I think now it just looks like a regular penguin. But sometimes I think, like I said before, the gnome essence gets lost if gnome essence is actually a thing. But anyways, moving on to my favorite gnome of the challenge. I shouldn't say my favorite, but I really think it is. If I had to narrow it down, I love the position of this gnome. I love the movement it gives. I actually drew inspiration from another gnome picture, which I put inside my Gnomevember reel and TikTok. I put my inspiration picture in that so you could kind of see it. I just changed up the color palette a little bit, added some of my own touches, but I love the movement that this gnome gives. Here is my pine gnome. I think it looks more like the Grinch. I think it's funny because the people who were making gnomes for my gnome challenge, they did like the pine needles on the beard, and I totally wish I had seen their gnomes before I made mine, because I totally would have done the same thing. Theirs looked so cute, and I'm not really happy with how this gnome came out. Love this gingerbread gnome though, and I really wish I said in my video, if I had not done a gingerbread theme in my bullet journal in December 2021, I totally would have done it again just to use this gnome in my December bullet journal for 2022. I love how this turned out, like the dripping icing beard. I think the drippy beards, they get me. Just like the baker gnomes, they get me too. I love the color palette. It just came out so amazing. There's that penguin gnome who's not actually a gnome anymore. And then the last gnome of the challenge is my candy cane gnome. I was struggling with this color palette because I wanted to add in pink and red, and then the pink wasn't looking right, so I covered it up with gray, and now I just think it's too bold in some places, but other than that, I think this gnome challenge turned out really well. I still have a few pages in the back. I'm really hoping to do another gnome challenge maybe in June to finish this book up. Otherwise, I do have another B5 size book to use as my gnome journal if I need another one. But that is it for my 2022 gnome challenge journal. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe while you're here. Also, don't forget to check out my bullet journal Instagram at Creative Minds Coffee Grinds and my bullet journal TikTok, which is at Creative Mind Coffee Grinds without the S. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!